Hey fam, this is my first road bike, and that is the bike I'm riding at the moment. There's 20 years and almost 20 bikes in between them. So what I want to do today is my full bike story. The good, the bad, and the downright ugly. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and for the last 7 years, this channel has been about documenting my journey from getting into riding to creating and riding in a UCI level race team. But I've been guilty of always looking forward, like documenting the present, getting caught up in the new frothy thing. I've never really looked back. 2007, we were in Pau on a holiday, and someone had the idea of riding up the Col du Tourmalet. The day of that ride, feeling a little anxious and potentially a bit hungover, I walked into a bike shop and I saw a lady in a red dress. I remember walking out of that shop with the bike, and Elizabeth turned to me and said, "Well, that's it, Chris. You'll never need another bike." 2 hours later, we were at the base of one of the most mythical climbs in the Tour de France, and I was aboard my French mistress. Elizabeth was there as well, so it was all a little bit awkward, but not a bad new bike day, right? That bike took me through Irish winters. I was living in Ireland at the time. We went back to the Alps with Deeks a couple of times. I rode through that, did some sportifs on it. I think I bought some fast forward deep section 50mm carbon clinchers, alloy carbon clinchers, because they were red, and I had red tires on them, and I had Mavic yellow shoes, and I thought I was the boss, because I was the boss. That bike, the Time Edge, was all I ever wanted. That was until a mate of mine showed me a replay of Stuart O'Grady winning a bike race which looked like it had taken place over the streets of Temple Bar. It was from another planet. I was totally transfixed by this event, which was kind of part rugby, part cycling. So when a sportif version of that event was announced, I needed Stewie's bike. Enter the Cervelo R3 SL. Now, I don't really remember how I got this bike because it was sort of before the big kind of forums and marketplace stuff. So it was secondhand, but I do remember the bike was massive. Like, it was a 56, I had 175 centimeter cranks on it, 44 centimeter bars, though it had Campagnolo full mechanical super record, which, as beautiful as it was, I can remember the day I tried to put the fast forward wheels that I had from the Time Edge onto the Cervelo, and I realized the cassette's not the same. Whoa, what's going on here? Bike things are different? Elizabeth and I moved back to Australia in around 2011. Both the rigs came with me. We went through the US at the time, where I did get a chance when I was in Fresno to briefly ride a Trek which had electronic gearing on it. I can remember that. It's the first time I ever rode electronic gearing, and I was like, what the hell is this? Anyway, we digress. We get back to Australia, we move into our current place, and yes, I do the traditional thing that all male fools must do at some point in their life. They drive their bike into the roof of their garage door. Veil the Cervelo R3. Later that year, we actually went back to Ireland. Remember when we traveled a lot? For some weddings, and I can remember walking in, remember when we went to buy bikes in bike shops? I walked into a bike shop in Dublin, Mike's Bikes I think was the one, and I saw a Look 695, and it was a spaceship. It was actually from the future. Like, it had the integrated brakes in the fork, integrated rear brake in the chainstays, integrated cables through the stem and bar. It was way before its time, and if you think current integrated bikes are a nightmare for mechanics, that thing was next level. I think this bike is how I met Felicia, because I honestly lived at the bike shop. I was there every 2 days. If you just looked at those front brakes the wrong way, they would go out of alignment. That said, the thing was a rocket ship. I had that built up. I won some races on this, so I probably shouldn't be admitting this, but it was like 6.5 kilos. Easily. So in 2015, maybe 16, Felice helped me build up a Legend 9.5, which was a custom Italian frame builder that he was importing at the time. Researching this bike, I learned more about the process of building a bike, the science of it, the history of it, the culture of it. I mean, I knew all this stuff existed, but it wasn't until I'd gone through this process Then the bike arrived. And I remember this first ride on this bike. It was a ride out to West Head with Danny Roberts-Clark. I got to West Head and something changed. The rabbit hole had just opened and I jumped in head first. For the first time, I saw the value in a bike beyond its weight, beyond its speed, beyond its performance. I saw the value in owning something that gave you pure pleasure. But more than that, like the connection that I felt I had to the bike made me feel that that was the best bike on the planet. It was like, it was my secret weapon in every race because no one else had that bike. Campagnolo's Super Record EPS. My God. When you fall down the rabbit hole, you pretty quickly hit your head on a pair of aero bars and a disc wheel. And yeah, I did. I bought a BMC Time Machine, a 2012 edition, the same one that Cadel had ridden actually in the Tour de France in 2012. I bought it on Bicycle Market in around 2016, 2017. It's crazy when you look at that thing right now. Does it look familiar? Drop seat stays, those aero tubing, integration. That thing was super fast. Like I stole a New South Wales State Time Trial Championship medal on it. And like it took me to one of my life goals, a sub 60-minute Calga TT. If you know, you know. Yeah, so it's late 2017. I'd been racing a full NRS season with Sydney Uni, but things were changing. We just welcomed Kira into the world, our second daughter. We were renovating the house, so I decided to start a Lycra business and use a race team to promote it. Neuro Racing was born. With this, my relationship with bikes changed. I wasn't looking for bikes for myself. I was approaching shops, distributors, brands in an attempt to form partnerships. The bike very much took a back seat to whatever the relationship was that I could try and secure. And I wasn't getting much reception, to be honest, nor should I. And it really wasn't until the TAP Australia, and I won the TAP Australia, and I made a video about it, episode 1 on this channel. We eventually did a bulk buying deal for a fleet of Ridley Noahs with SRAM ETAP. Now, you remember this bike, right? It's the one with the wacky cutout in the fork. I had this weird love-hate relationship with this bike. Like, it was a fast bike. I know it was a fast bike, but it was so harsh, guys. Still were running 23s, 25s, and probably putting 100 PSI in them. And I remember like racing Heffron and stuff on that thing, and it was just like harsh. Couple that with that first generation of SRAM ETAP, which, you know, it was plastic in comparison to the Campy EPS that I'd come from, which was like something from a Milan art gallery. Like, it just felt like absolute plastic. So I remember, like, I still got good results on it, and it comes back to that thing, like the bike was turning into that rather than sort of being a passionate kind of love that I would look at, you know? I know I said the bike had become more about the deal and not the feel, but I would be lying if I didn't admit to having specifically targeted Bianchi because of the Specialissima. It was everything the Ridley Noah wasn't. And I loved it. I dropped a frame size. I shortened my cranks. I went down to 170mm cranks, and the Shimano there go too. I was like, whoa, wow. The only bad thing on that bike, the matte finish. My God, the matte finish. Thank God for Mr. Sheen. Mr. Sheen was the only kind of solution I'd come up with, but my God, that was impossible to keep clean. So we rolled that relationship with Bianchi from 2018 into 2019, and I got the opportunity to ride the XR4 countervail. All right, so now I remember hearing the sales pitch on it, like it's NASA technology, blah, blah, blah. And I was super skeptical. And I was also super skeptical of aero bikes because I'd experienced this thing on the Ridley. It was fast, but it was so harsh. But I was like, this thing isn't harsh. In fact, I can remember on the XR4, I had a -17 stem. I had 36mm bars. I had 36mm bars on an aero bike, and it was still super comfortable. And something else that shouldn't be overlooked on that bike was those direct mount brakes. That was right at the time when, you know, disc brakes were starting to come and they were starting to push you on that. And I can remember getting on the direct mount stuff because, you know, at that point you were still training on alloy rims and then racing on tubs. Ball ache, but whatever. But when you put those C60 tubs on that XR4, it was drugs. It was actual drugs. Enter the XR3 Disc. Now, I'm proud of pretty much everything on this channel. Stand behind it. But I'm not proud of that review. I don't know whether I got caught up in the frothiness of it because it was the new stuff. I don't know whether I hadn't ridden it enough. I don't know whether maybe I was biased. I don't know. But the bike was shit. Essentially, Bianchi slapped a set of disc brakes on a rim brake frame. It was harsh, it was heavy, and it was super expensive. It was after riding that bike that I made that video of I'm going back to rim brakes, that one. And, you know, potentially you could read between the lines of what I was saying there, but, you know, still that XR3 video is on the channel. I should potentially take it down. Not a great bike. Got back on the XR4 and was like, thank God, this thing's amazing. Away from the team stuff, I was dabbling in a bit of cyclocross and gravel because that's what everyone does. So there was a giant TCX, the orange frame one. That was my cyclocross bike from my cyclocross career, which ended up in Terry Hills when I tried to do one of those, you know, the guy in front of me did the bunny hop thing over the thing. I tried to do it and I face planted and embarrassed myself, and I thought, you know what, I don't need that in my life. So sold that and thought gravel, that's something I'm going to be good at too. So Berry Mountain Cycles and got a Diverge, a specialized Diverge with 32 mil tires because that's what gravel bikes are seemingly. Took that on a one bike, I took that on a bike packing trip, and I was that guy. I was the guy who was last up every hill, last down every descent, got 700 flats, including a tubeless blowout. That thing was on Bike Market before the sun had set getting home from that particular event. Which brings us to these bikes. And these bikes have been a massive part of my life for the last 3 years. In fact, they have been our UCI Continental experience. Working with Devel and specifically on the UCI accreditation process, I got to see the other side of the frame industry. And I've done some really good videos on that subject on this channel. In fact, the video for that particular bike goes into a lot of the details around what's going on in those factories. But from a cyclist perspective, from my perspective, it's become very difficult to have a relationship with a bike again when you see what's really going on. That said, and I know people can be super critical of all that kind of stuff, but honestly, the build quality that we achieved specifically on this, the A01 rim brake. This, by the way, was the first version of it. So this has, as you can see, got a little bit of decal for the girls. I'd love to build this one back up, but like the build quality on that bike is just superb. Like the carbon finish on it, I've never seen anything like that on any other bike. So with the A01, then came the Stratos, the gravel bike, which reintroduced me to gravel bike riding, reintroduced me to tubeless, and yep, happy days with all that. Also got to play around with a mountain bike, the Meta version 2, which I actually didn't have anything to do with. Thank God they didn't want me helping design that thing. I would have been a disaster. And subsequently A02, which I'm still trying to help out with on that one. So for 3.5 years of my life, I'd really only ridden Devel bikes. And that was until I went to the US earlier this year. That was a wacky couple of weeks. Because like on the one hand, you know, I was riding this 2012 rim brake bike, doing the hardest bike ride I've ever done in my life. And I was really happy with the way it performed. Then flash forward like 2 days and I'm on a 2022 one by super bike. I can remember driving home from Tyler's place after that ride, and it was like my passion for the differences in these bikes had been reignited. I know this sounds so lame, but it was a Neo moment. It was like the passion of the legend combined with the subsequent years of race experience and different experience in that mold, and then with what I'd seen behind closed doors with Devel, it kind of all made sense to me. So here I am, 20 years later, arguably exactly where I started, fascinated by bikes and looking for my next one. Guys, this has been a very narcissistic, but very cathartic. I've really enjoyed just sitting down and going through this. Now, I would love to hear your bike story, especially if one of the bikes I talked about is in your history as well. So what's next? Well, you'll have to subscribe to find out, won't you? I don't know, but do subscribe to the channel, guys, and please do like this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you real soon. So clean, like seriously, unbelievable how clean that is and neat that is.